Good morning, everybody. This is Ron Whittlick. We are outside of Senator John Brooks' office in Massapequa.
Good morning.
All right, and we are here to call attention to the fact that Senator John Brooks is a liar.
Yes.
That he promised to co-sponsor the New York Health Act, and then, even though he had co-sponsored it in the past, once the Democrats took over the Senate and there was a real chance to pass it, all of a sudden he decided he no longer supported this piece of legislation. The New York Health Act would create a Medicare for all system. Everybody in New York would be able to have health care, and 97% of New Yorkers would save a whole lot of money.
Could I interject right
please,
here,
go ahead.
Mr. Brooks, let me add that we have 39 Democratic senators in the New York State Senate now. We don't need you. Why don't you, okay, we don't need you, okay? But really, you should keep your promises. More on that later.
All right, so what we've done here, and I'm going to zoom in on some of these, we have some signs calling out John Brooks for what he's done here. And we also have a bunch of GoFundMe pages. These are all New Yorkers, people who live in the state of New York and need the New York Health Act. A lot of these people have health insurance, but their health insurance is terrible. Many of them have no insurance at all. I'm going to zoom in on some of these so you can get an idea of what we're talking about. These are GoFundMe pages. These are New Yorkers that have been reduced to digital panhandling because their politicians do not care about them.
In the wealthiest country in the history of Earth.
Right? We've got families here, we've got babies, families that are going bankrupt, people that are going to die for a lack of health care because they cannot afford it, because people like John Brooks have decided to side with the pharmaceutical companies and the health insurance industry instead of working people here in New York.
Ex-Republicans like John Brooks, Ron.
Right, that's right. We've learned a lesson that when Republicans run as Democrats, they are still Republicans.
Not so ex, not so ex.
Right, and so here we have a repeated pattern of behavior where we have Democrats who run promising things to New Yorkers.
We see you, John Brooks.
And then when they're elected, they do not carry through with those promises. The Democrats did the same thing in the state of California, and here they are doing it in New York, and John Brooks is leading that charge. Right? This is why people are sick of politicians. This is why half of Americans don't vote. This is why someone like Donald Trump can get into office. Because New Yorkers and Americans in general do not trust politicians for good reason. They have been lied to repeatedly throughout their entire lives. All right, so now we're going to share a few stories about why the New York Health Act matters so much and why the deceit of John Brooks is so troubling.
Hi, my name is Mariana Pineda. Some of you have heard my story before, but I don't mind sharing it again
Hi,
so that you
Mariana.
understand why it's so important to not have our health insurance linked to our employers, to our spouses. The New York Health Act would provide comprehensive coverage from womb to tomb for all New Yorkers, regardless of immigration status, regardless of income, so that you can be flexible with your job, so that you can be flexible in all of the different things in your life. So perhaps you are scared to start a small business because you don't want to leave your job because of your health insurance. With the New York Health Act, small businesses would flourish because they'd be able to get health insurance. Perhaps you are in a bad relationship and you are scared to leave because you don't want to lose your health insurance through your spouse,
Me
or you
too,
don't want your
people.
children to
Me
leave.
too, people. Do you hear, Mariana, about
So
bad
that's another reason
relationships?
why the New York Health Act was so beneficial. I was teaching in a non-public school in Queens, New York. I found out that I was pregnant, and I wound up being diagnosed with preeclampsia. As a result of that, rather than get put out on disability through my job, when I was put on bed rest by my physician, I was terminated by my employer. So I lost my health insurance in the third trimester of a high-risk pregnancy, and my children all lost their health insurance. I have a teenage daughter who has psychiatric issues. She was in a residential program. She was kicked out of her residential psychiatric placement.
Because of people like you, John Brooks. We are begging for health care in the wealthiest country in the history of Earth. You got that? Because of people like you.
So If I would have been covered under, say, the New York Health Act, it wouldn't have mattered that I lost my job during a high-risk pregnancy because my coverage is independent of my employer. That's why it's so important to pass the New York Health Act so that all of our children are covered, so that we don't have to stop and get new coverage every time we change jobs or have these waiting periods. For a lot of employees, they have to wait 6 months before they start getting coverage through their employer. So it's really, really important that we start separating employment from health insurance. Everybody should get the same thing. Our elected officials are going to be covered, even though they were elected in November, and then they took office in January.
And they're going to get primaried and sent to the boneyard.
They're on vacation from now until when the session starts again. But all of this time, they will have health insurance. But God forbid, single parents who lose their jobs while they're pregnant because their employers won't put them out on disability. It's insane that this is the system that we have. People talk about, oh, well, we want to have choice. Well, I choose to have coverage, and that was not an option for me. There was no way that ineligible for unemployment that I could have covered, thousands of dollars a month to get COBRA coverage. So we need to change the system, and the New York Health Act is a good start, and Medicare for all on the national level is the ultimate goal, and that's where we need to get. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mariana.
Great job. Great job. Okay, I'll try to be brief. I'll try to be brief on. My name's Andrew Grover. I ran for state senate last year in District 6 because I was afraid of just people like John Brooks going back on their word, because as Ron said, we've seen this movie before. We've seen this behavior repeatedly from Democrats, from Republicans, from every shade of whatever right-wing corporate hack, and John Brooks is another in a long string. This is not really about John Brooks, it's about the collusion of the corporate Democratic wing of the party, whatever you want to call it, to make sure that no real progress is ever made, that the corporate free-for-all never ends. John Brooks, let me ask you a question. I attended your town hall last year because I was running for office. I still was naive enough to think I could learn something from you. So I attended the town hall and I tossed you what I thought was a softball question. As a co-sponsor of the New York Health Act, Mr. Brooks, tell us how it's going to improve the lives of all New Yorkers. And what you said to me was this: I'm not sure I agree with you, in your curmudgeonly way. You said, and I said, what, confused? I said, well, Mr. Brooks, I understand you're a co-sponsor. And you said, no. Meanwhile, you were listed as a co-sponsor. This is last year, Brooks.
That's right.
Okay,
that's right.
I'll say one more thing about this. Mr. Brooks, have all your principles that you felt as a young man all fallen by the wayside, or did you never have any to begin with? It's a fair question. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, so should we knock on the door and see if anybody would like to come out and address us from the inside? Yeah. Hello. Hi. We're wondering if anybody from this office represents John Brooks is willing to come out here and answer some questions about his refusal to support the New York Health Act.
We'd like that very much.
If you can come out here and stand in front of this wall of GoFundMe accounts of people that are in New York that are going bankrupt or dying for a lack of health care, can someone from John Brooks' campaign come out here and answer some questions?
If someone would like to step into the office, we'd be happy to.
Okay.
Okay, let's all come in. Let's go.
All right.
We'll all come in. Great. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you like to come in a minute? Come, please.
Thank you. Oh, he's here.
Thank you.
My
Everybody's
No,
welcome.
it's not.
No,
Hi.
I just thought out of the corner of my eye.
Hi. So we have some questions.
Please come on in.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
In here or into one of the offices? Okay, great. Here, come on in. Kids, you want to sit?
Thank you for your politeness.
Yeah.
Let me say that right off the bat.
All right.
In a sticky situation. Thank you very much.
All right. So
You're a gentleman.
we know that John Brooks had co-sponsored the New York Health Act for 2 years in a row. When he ran for office, he pledged to sponsor it again. He told this to me in person. He put it in writing. We knocked doors for him based on this. And now he's refusing to do it. And now the session has ended, and we don't have any. We don't have the New York Health Act. So we'd love to hear an explanation for why he's suddenly refusing to support this bill.
There's no funding attached to it. Simple as that.
That's a ridiculous canard of a statement. The funding is
He co-sponsored
all in the
it
bill.
twice in a row
That is
before.
not true. Sir, that's just not true. I'll real-time fact check you. That is just not true. You got another one?
How are they paying for it?
Read the bill. You're supposed to be an aide of a Democratic New York State senator.
Sir,
And a
again,
candidate for
I'm
assembly
sorry.
last
I'll
year,
shut
too.
up. I'll let Ron talk.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ron.
right, again, folks, we're not here to
You're
argue
here to
or
prevent
dispute.
health care for us. That's what you're here for, apparently. Because you got nothing to say but lies about how there's no funding, which is a crock of, pardon me, okay? So, do you have another answer that might have some truth to it? I mean,
Do you acknowledge
it's a
that
fair
do
question.
you acknowledge that the New York Health Act would save money for the vast majority of New Yorkers?
It's unproven yet.
So the whole world does
It's
it, though. But the whole world does it.
unproven.
Canada does
Another
it.
week,
England,
week,
France,
week.
Germany, Sweden, Denmark. The whole world does it, and everybody
is proven.
knows that it works.
It is proven.
So why all of a sudden, and why co-sponsor it twice and then suddenly pull the plug now? As soon as the Democrats have a majority and it could actually pass.
In countries where profiteers don't run the show, they have single payer, and everyone gets the health care they need at much lower cost, sir. With all due respect. So, we don't need any more lies. We'd like a straight answer, though.
He co-sponsored the bill 2 years in a row, and then suddenly, when the Democrats have the majority and there's an opportunity to actually pass it, he pulls back his support, and we want to know why.
We're spending
Because-
our time to do this on a weekday, sir. I'm sorry for interjecting here. To do this on a weekday. We don't need lies or BS answers. We need a straight answer why John Brooks was a co-sponsor last year, but this year he's not. So far, you've given me BS. Let's get a real answer.
Okay. The answer is, always has been,
No.
is
You're gonna lie
Okay.
when you. Okay, go ahead, Ron. I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
I'm
Obviously,
leaving.
we can't have a
I'm
conversation,
leaving,
so
I'm leaving. Ron,
thank you
talk.
very much. All right,
I'd like to hear your answer.
Yes, he left, so you can
Yes.
speak now freely.
the situation has not changed
But then why if you had co-sponsored it and you're
because
saying-
because Senator Brooks co-sponsored the bill, supports health care, wants to see everybody have good health care. They have yet to come up with a plan on how universal health care for all, would be funded.
But why co-sponsor it and then not co-sponsor
It
it?
was co-sponsored so that you could look, so you could begin the discussion, okay? It's like seconding a motion, okay? You have to begin that discussion.
So he
So
felt
the-
safe
so the-
co-sponsoring it
so-
knowing
so-
that there was
so-
no chance of it passing.
So the discussion is still ongoing, and that's where we have to be right now, is we have to have a continuing, ongoing discussion to look at how healthcare is funded, to look at the cost of healthcare, and to find ways to improve healthcare for everyone.
So has he met with Gustavo Rivera and asked for clarification in terms of the financing?
Okay?
Because
Again,
that's a senator that's the lead sponsor on the bill.
and Senator Rivera is the chair of the Senate Health Committee, and their committee is working on this, and we have faith that Senator Rivera will continue his work. This is a very, very complex issue. It needs a lot of study, and it needs to be done the right way. And so until they have figured out how to do this, all right, saying that we want to do this and figuring out how to do it are two different things. So very clearly, folks have said they want to see improvements in their health care. Now we have to figure out how are we going to pay for it, and right now that has not been figured out yet. So we'll
The
continue to work on it.
the campaign for New York Health has two separate economists who ran the numbers on this, and through a basic system of progressive taxation, the vast majority of New Yorkers would save money, and only those in the top 3% would pay more. And we're talking now about people who are making $350,000, $400,000 a year. So is John Brooks saying that he's more concerned about the people who are making that amount of money and not the 97% of people that are struggling to pay their monthly bills?
Again, we're looking at it. It deserves to be studied. It's not quite there yet. Okay, so we're definitely open to continuing
So
to
what
look
does
at
it
it.
take to get there? What are the specific issues that they need to have resolved?
Figure out how you're going to pay for health care. They haven't figured that out yet. You think that you think that you have some folks that have done some work in this area, and they have some suggestions. That has to be vetted and worked on, and to make sure that we actually have this all put together. So it's making progress. It's getting there. It wasn't quite there yet.
So how many years has John Brooks been in the Senate?
This is our third year.
Okay, so that's been 3 years. Where has he been on this? This is his specialty, right? This is the topic that he claims expertise in. What has he been doing for the last 3 years to get there?
He has not claimed expertise in this.
He has to us in spoken events that his background is in health and health insurance, and that this is his area of specialty.
You have to follow the money, and you have to see who he is bought by and who he is beholden
Folks,
to.
again, that's where we are. Is all right. All right. We want to see all New Yorkers have good health care. We understand that health care is expensive. We understand that there is a lot of discussion about how we can do a better job of funding and delivering health care for all. And that's an ongoing discussion. But the discussion is still ongoing. It hasn't come to a definitive conclusion yet. So let's keep the discussion going, right? We'll keep an open mind. We'll keep an open door, all right? And we'll continue to work with you.
All right. And when those New Yorkers on the door, when some of them pass away for lack of insurance, we'll put that statement on their tombstone. Thanks.
All right.
She falls in the Boyle side, but Long Islanders are dying. Long Islanders are uninsured. I'm currently uninsured. I was a substitute teacher. My leave replacement is over, and I have a position for September. But in the meantime, for July and August, I have no health insurance. I can't qualify for Medicaid. I can't, I'm not going to be able to buy something on the marketplace, for July and August. So basically, I have to hope that my 4 kids, nothing happens to us this summer before my new job starts in September in my new teaching job and my new health insurance kicks in. This is why it's so important to have coverage that's not linked to your employer, that every Long Islander has access to from womb to tomb.
Right. I mean, this is why saying it's an ongoing discussion is so frustrating for so many people.
Because people are sick, people are suffering, and you can have all the conversations you want, but that doesn't stop the fact that Long Islanders are dying right now because they don't have access to health care. It's that simple. And so we really hope that Mr. Brooks will reach out to Mr. Rivera. We're going to call Mr. Rivera and ask him to reach out to Senator Brooks so that you guys can go over the numbers, because there is a plan in place. There are, suggestions for how to fund this. If we can fund endless wars, we can fund health care for every New Yorker. Okay? Thank you.
All right.